So the Mavs beat OKC in Game 6. They're going on to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in 3 years. This team looks a lot different than the one we saw last year, and especially the one we saw a couple of years ago. But through these first two playoff series, what have we learned about this Mavericks team? Saad, we'll start with you.
Well, I think we've learned that they can win in a lot of different ways. And I think that was their biggest flaw before the trade deadline was if the shots were falling, they were winning and it was great. But they didn't have a whole lot of presence inside and they weren't able to win if the three-point shot wasn't falling. And now with P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford, what they've done, and of course we can't not talk about Derek Lively and the performance that he's had. I think it goes so far beyond what Luka and Kyrie are. And you know, we've talked about those two ad nauseum, and rightfully so. But Kyrie, I think, still has another level that he can take his game at this point. But what we've learned about the Mavericks so far is that they're able to win in a lot of different ways with a lot of different contributors.
Yeah, I've found myself thinking this is not even close to the Mavs' ceiling. I mean, Luka's playing on one leg. Kyrie just doesn't even play a first half for the most part. I mean, at 4 points at halftime last night, and then flips a switch and scores 18 in the second half of Game 6. Bob, what stood out to you through these first two rounds?
Yeah, I think Saad's on to a lot of stuff. Just the identity has changed so dramatically. And for those of us who have been following this team a really long time, that identity is sort of stuck with them through generations, that they are a finesse team, a pretty team, a perimeter team, and that's changed. And by the way, it's changed almost overnight. Even if you look at the Western Conference Finals team of 2022, it's unrecognizable to this crew. This crew can dominate in the paint. They can win without hitting their threes. They dunk all day long. They sometimes control the paint and the glass. They can actually bully other teams. And I think the entire league is still kind of catching up on the idea that the Dallas Mavericks are actually one of those playoff rugged teams that are more than happy to drag you out to the deep water and see if you can swim. And I just think that's how you win in this league. You're not just going to have great shooting nights. You have to have other ways to do it. And it seems like they can now. And so for me, a lot of the credit has to go to the architects of this entire operation.
Yeah, I agree. Jason Kidd taking the Mavs to the conference finals 2 times in his first 3 years. And he's gotten a lot of grief from some Mavericks fans over those last 3 years. But, I mean, when the lights are at their brightest, this team rises to the occasion. And coaching, obviously, Nico Harrison's played a huge role in bringing in the right pieces for this team, especially at the trade deadline. Got to give props to the front office because so much we put into the X's and O's of these performances from the players, but bringing in the right guys to get those W's is obviously a big factor.
And I want to jump in on there because I think we all elevate Rick Carlisle and what he did here to such a degree, and yet now Kidd has the most Western Conference Finals appearances of any coach in Mavs history, and that's a little hard to juggle sometimes with the criticisms that we've laid at his feet. But you can't argue with results. He's done a remarkable job, and I know we'd like to talk about culture not changing overnight. On a certain level, it did. And the moment you bring Gafford and Washington in, everything changed. And it started with that first game against the Thunder, which they blew them out. And that kind of set the stage for this latest run.
I would take it even back to the offseason. Derrick Jones Jr. has been, I mean, dollar for dollar, one of the big additions for them. Also in the locker room, he's just a great chemistry guy for them. And Derek Lively, the second, incredible addition to this team as a rookie, and given what he's gone through, to go plus 26 in Game 6 was amazing. Bob, I'm curious, to you from not just Game 6, but that whole series against the Thunder, who stood out to you the most outside of the superstar duo of Luka and Kyrie? Who was kind of that third star in your eyes?
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of this thing, is it does change night to night, and that's an exciting thing. That tells you actually do have a team that's all, reading from the same page and all it's a cogent design. And so, not to avoid your question, but I think some nights there's Derrick Jones and other nights P.J. Washington, and they sort of interchange for each other, almost in a way that Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively do. And so they have these interchangeable parts. And by the way, P.J. Washington was interchangeable in the first round with Maxi Kleba. And so, they have these guys who are sort of like for like, and I love that design. I assume it's by not by accident, that they want guys who sort of can switch out for each other. Now, I don't know if Jaden Hardy and Dante Exum are exactly the same thing, but now we've seen that role sort of switch. So what that does is it gives you a redundancy that, hey, this guy may not be feeling it tonight. This guy may be in foul trouble. But here's this other guy who is a facsimile of that and maybe can pick up the slack. And I think that's the type of way you have to think about things when you have to beat a team 4 times in 2 weeks. So it all sort of makes sense to me right now in a way that, frankly, at times Rick Carlisle and Donnie Nelson didn't always look like they talked to each other. If I may use Jalen Brunson as a great example, where one guy seems to really like him and one guy is like, I don't know really. And so, it seems like Nico and Jason Kidd and whoever else is in that brain trust seem to be visiting with each other and agreeing with the way they see the game.
And it seems like a team that plays for each other, and the level of selflessness you see permeate throughout the roster really fortifies that culture that they've built there. They really look like a team that loves each other, and typically when you get that plus talent, leads to great things.
I'm also going to jump in here and say, remember how the playoffs started with that blowout loss to the Clippers? What a difference a couple weeks makes, right?